Hi, we have Ryan Hibbs here with us, and he's a transhumanist. Um, would you like
Good
to,
to be here.
yes, so would you like to explain to us what a transhumanist is?
Um, I can give you like the short version. I definitely encourage people to like look it up because a lot of people have different views on exactly what it is. But essentially, a transhumanist is somebody that believes that we should use technology and the modern advances that we have in medicine and stuff to to its full potential. And if that includes like one of the things that they usually included in that is the extension of lifespan. Um, a lot of people say they want to live forever, although that's highly unlikely. Forever is thrown around a lot by some transhumanists, but really like the longer you live, the more your chances of death by an accident approach like 100%. So even if you have only a small amount per year or whatever, eventually it gets to the point where over a long enough time, it's like 100% chance that you'll die. Um, and that's like, I think, 2000 years. Like if say all of my biological functions or whatever are perfect, I never aged or whatever, um, by 2000 years, then it would be like almost 100% chance that I would have died from something, right? Um, so yeah, it's about extension of life and preservation of value in the universe, is what transhumanists do.
So, how did you get to this? Like, what turned you into a transhumanist? Um, yeah, how did that start?
I think so. Mostly it was like I used to like watch a lot of documentaries and stuff as a kid, and it was like I think very early on, like I think I was like 16 or 17 when I figured this out, um, about how um, most of like the aging and degradation that occurs in the body occurs through the organs, right? The brain does degrade, but it's very good at repairing itself. And it's usually degrading as a result of degradation of the organs.
Mhm.
And then, so I read about this scientist uh, in the US, I believe. I don't recall exactly where, but he performed head transplants on mice, and they were clones of each other, so they were like genetically identical, or at least genetically very similar. Um, it's been a long time since I read about this, so if I get the details wrong, please forgive me. But so, anyways, he did head transplants from old mice onto like old mice heads onto young mouse bodies, and then so obviously these new mice, they were paraplegic because we don't have the technology to reattach spinal cords yet. So they couldn't move. However, these old mice that were almost at the point of death for a mouse, 3 years, when transplanted onto the young bodies, they lived for as long as the young bodies would have lived. So it basically like doubled their lifespan or whatever by doing this. Um, and I was like, well, we could do that with humans. Like that's pretty much like today's technology, right? Like, sure, like they'd be quadriplegic or whatever, but you know, it's possible that like with today's technology, and this is like when I was 16, so like 25 years ago or whatever, uh, I was like, oh, today's technology, we can make people live forever. And then I got more and more into it and studied like different people like that are trying to extend human lifespan, or human health span is what they say, right? Like extending the time that we are healthy. Um, like Ray Kurzweil and Dr. Aubrey de Grey from the SENS Foundation. Um, I just consumed every bit of documentary footage that was out there about this, and yeah, it's just something that I definitely believe in.
So are you more optimistic or are you more pessimistic that around the time when we are all, probably old, that this technology would be feasible and accessible to all of us, like
Yeah,
regular people?
I'm fairly optimistic.
Wow.
Um, Considering the fact that like at 16, I thought that we could do it with like the technology of that day. And it's been so long since then now, um, that like technology's only gotten better, right? Like there was that one scientist who never actually did it, but he was talking about doing a head transplant on a human, right?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, there's a lot to say about him and his practices, but like I'm saying, like it's getting to the point that like that kind of stuff is feasible. And then so that's just one thing, right? Like we have cloning technology and the potential to do
Yeah.
head transplants, right? That's out there. But then like the thing that is like most promising to me is the SENS Foundation, headed by Dr. Aubrey de Grey. And he's basically um, he's categorized like I believe it's seven causes of aging, like seven biological processes that cause aging. And I think out of the seven, five of them have like proposed treatments. One of them is like cancer, right?
Yes.
Cancer in aging. And so, like Biden was saying, I think that he wanted to focus on a cure for cancer or whatever in his term and stuff like that. And it's complex. Like you can't just be like, I'm gonna cure cancer or we
Yeah.
found a cure for cancer, because it's like 200 diseases, right? They're all different and they all work in different ways. But like we have been steadily chipping away at them, right? There's there's cancers that existed like when I was 16 that now are like not a threat, right? And we're chipping away at them one by one slowly. And yeah, this progress is happening not just steadily, but like exponentially, right? Um, and whereas in like starting from like 1950 to like 1990 was like the technological boom, where like the first computer was like a box with little light switches on it and stuff like that. But and then now like we have like the most advanced computers that like couldn't even be imagined back then, um, at our fingertips for like reasonable prices, which would be like this computing power would have been like the money of an entire government, and like everybody has one. And that's the same with how biological technology is progressing right now. Like, I just saw an article. It was, I fucking love science. I don't know if I can swear, but I just did. So you might have to bleep that out.
Okay.
But yeah. And as much as I have a lot to say to them because they're mostly a lot of clickbait and stuff like that. But one of the things that I saw an article for is that they're going to be testing out a drug in September that will regrow teeth in people that have lost their teeth.
Nice.
And yeah, like, and I knew about like different ways of doing it like years ago, like many years ago.
Wow.
Like there was one, I think that was like, there was one that was a stem cell um, insertion, and then there was one, I think it was like electricity or magnetism or something that they used, and you had to wear this device for like 2 months, and it caused the tooth to regrow in a place that was lost. Um, but yeah, like we're getting to the point that like now we've got all this AI and everything, and it's
Yeah.
helping us understand like biology and like everything inside of our bodies, how to make it work in like maximum efficiency.
I should say your optimism is quite infectious.
That's good. That's good. I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
So how many, like, if you have a choice, and when the technology is feasible, how many more years in your life would you like to add approximately?
So I want to outlast the heat death of the universe. When there's nothing left but black holes, I want to be around those black holes, throwing matter into them, farming them for energy, and then eventually figuring out how to like start a new universe or something along those lines.
We might be in a different planet then.
Now that's idea. That's idealistic, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, but just going back to like what I said before about uh, the 2,000 year limit or whatever, if your
Yeah.
biology is working perfectly. So there's ways around that too, right?
Yeah.
Like, so several years back, um, these scientists they mapped the entire connectome of a flatworm.
Hmm.
So, like every single neuron and every single connection in every single one of those neurons entirely mapped. And then they took that and they put it into a simulation in a computer. And then they put that simulation in a little robot and they ran the robot, and the robot behaved like a flatworm, basically. It had like sensors that were hooked up, and that would like act as like an input for food and stuff like that. And it basically acted like a flatworm. So that opens up the possibility that maybe we'll be able to eventually, once we get better scanning technology and better ability to like handle large amounts of data, that we'll be able to like put a person's entire connectome into a computer and simulate that person, and it would be that person in a simulation. So, like, I think that that would still be me, even though it's just a highly advanced simulation. It has every thought that I would ever have, and it would think in exactly the same way that I would. So, if even if like you had to destroy your brain to think that, or to get that right, which some theories say that that might have to happen in order to fully scan a brain, you might have to like entirely destroy it. um but once that happens, you could close your eyes, go to sleep, and wake up in a computer. It would be no different from that, right? Like you lose consciousness when you go to sleep, and you wake up every day a new person, right?
Yes.
So if you went to sleep and every thought that was you woke up in a computer and ran in the exact same way that your brain would run, then to me, that would still be me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It like in my mind, right? And then so once you have that as an option, right? Now I could make 700 of myself. I can just copy that connectome as many times as I want, right? And I could have one go off in each direction in the galaxy, and they'd all go and have their own lives from there. Maybe we could meet up in a few million years and share all of our memories and reconnect and stuff like that. But um, yeah, like it opens up that possibility. So that would be like one way around the um, the 2,000 year limit, because you could have like backup copies, right? Every time you
Yes.
go to sleep, you save your brain to a computer, and then, yeah, you wake up. And then who knows? Like maybe one day we will have like the ability, like exists in the Matrix, where they can like upload karate to someone's brain. But instead of karate, what if they could upload your entire brain, right? And then you could just have a clone of yourself and just have your brain uploaded into that clone of yourself, or even like you could be a totally different body, right? It wouldn't matter, because your thoughts are you. So yeah, you could live either biologically by making copies of yourself, or you could live like technologically inside of a computer or simulation. And yeah.
Which would you prefer though, biologically living or technologically living? Because there's gonna be pros and cons in each of
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like, especially if you were like dead set on the meat body. If you wanted to stay like flesh and blood, um, there's a lot of people that wouldn't, right? They'd be like, why would I need to, or why would I want to be in a thing that needs to have food and poop and all of that when I can be in a simulation and I can live your entire lifetime in 3 seconds, right? Because computing speed could be, you could increase or decrease it, right? So like that would also open the option of like, say you're on a space voyage or whatever, right? Now it's unlikely that we'll ever get faster than light space travel, right? But if you're in a ship that takes like say 1 million years to get from one planet to the next planet, right? Um, you could turn down your processing speed
Hmm.
for that journey. So even though 1 million like chronological years have passed in the universe, to you it was like a day and a half or something like that, right? It would it would seem like a lot less. Or you could also like this is called frame jacking, by the way, changing your processing speed of your brain. But yeah, you could also say you wanted to like become a doctor. You could upgrade your frame speed inside of a computer, and you could do 7 years of schooling in a day and a half, right? And then yeah, so it would be just as if you lived that whole amount of time, but in a short amount of time.
So I'll give you some scenarios, like what if
Sure.
scenarios. So,
Yeah.
you know, we are optimistic right now, but what if it doesn't come into fruition? Like, what if, the world somehow encounters something that would alter science, I guess,
Yeah.
in the next few
Yeah. That
years?
is something that I have thought about.
Yeah.
So essentially, like if that happens, and in my entire lifespan, um, like life extension just doesn't happen. What I would want to do in that case is basically have as much data about my life as I could get. Like write down every single thing that I can possibly remember happening from like day one till the day I die, right? And have all of that backed up by like my Facebook profile, my uh, Twitter, whatever else, right? Have everything, all that data all collected together into like one source about my life. And then if possible, sometime in the future, after say science recovers, right, it might be possible for a very highly advanced AI to run a simulation based on all that data. The same way that like um, training an AI art model, right? It it'll output a picture and it won't be right, and it'll slowly adjust its weights and biases and stuff like that until it gets um, a model that can generate the right kinds of pictures, right? And if I have all this data about my life, then a sufficiently advanced AI would be able to run simulations, adjust the weights and values until it came up with a simulation of my life that was so exact and so perfect that if it put that simulation into another body, that it would wake up and it would think that it was me. It would essentially be me because uh, that AI would have like matched every single data point that happened in my life, every single thing I can remember, um, and it would be a simulation that was me pretty much. There's actually a sci-fi author. Um, I can't remember the name of the book or the author, unfortunately. All I remember is that in his book, they had a bunch of robots that were based off of characters from the past. And one of them was like John Keats, the author. And he was just a simulation. Like it just took everything it knew about his life, ran a simulation, and then woke him up in a robot body. And it was indistinguishable from the original. Like, so that would be a possibility, I think. Like if it doesn't happen, hopefully in the future an AI could, I guess, resurrect me in a way, like, but as a simulation that it wouldn't know that it wasn't me. It would be that advanced.
That is really fascinating to know. And for the next part of our conversation, I would like to dive a little more into the more practical aspects while still talking about transhumanism and the science that's surrounding it.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
yeah, some of these topics would include like um currently like how is death and dying handled in your part of the world, or what do you think can be improved like currently with the boomers dying, like probably what's currently wrong with the system or what is currently working, or and a bunch of things, scenarios that you would probably, I would want to know, you would want to probably tell your offsprings
All right.
um in the future.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So I would want to know more about the current system in your part of the world. How do most people view death and dying, and what's the current system in place when people age? And
So currently it's just kind of treated as like an inevitability. Um, Even though like the more we advance in medicine, the more it's not. Um, yeah, so like a lot of people, if you say like, oh, we should try and extend lifespan, they just say, well, you can't, right? But like the way that I always phrase it to people is not like, or they say like they want to die, right? Someday. And so the way that I always put it is I say, let's presume that like 100 years is the upper limit and nobody ever gets to live longer than 100 years, right?
yes.
So if it is, would you want that 100 years to be the way that it is now, where you get older and frailer and slowly degrade, and then you lose your mind, and then uh, random diseases take you and you die in horrible pain? Or would you like to be perfectly healthy in like a 30-year-old body and live all the way to the 100 and just go to sleep, right? And so if you say it that way to people, most people will be like, oh, yeah, well, I want that one. But they don't realize that like the same technology that we're developing that's going to let people do that is the same technology that will extend lifespan indefinitely.
And so like Okay, this is like probably a question that I don't know how to frame, but okay, if death was a person or an entity that you can talk to,
Mhm.
um, what would you tell death? What would you
Go away. um, yeah, like stop taking people. Um, yeah, like I don't like it as a concept. It's not just because like I am afraid of dying myself. It's because like I see like every single person as a potential immortal person, right? So even like an 80-year-old man that dies, right? To me, that man is somebody that could have been somebody that lived for 1,000,000 years, right? So everybody is just like a baby in my mind. They are dying way too young, no matter what their age is. It's way too young. They're just one step along on an endless journey, and that's why for me it's like such an urgent matter. Um, yeah, like I think that like everybody should be focused on this because we have the potential to do that. And so every single moment that we're not out there trying to stop death uh, is a moment that that potential immortals are dying.
if death goes away, what would you do for the rest of your living life, and how would you tackle or face the fact that we are people that reproduce, so there's going to be
Right.
a possible expansion of population?
Yeah. So so I don't believe that we're overpopulated at all. In fact, I think we're vastly underpopulated. Um, for example, okay, like presume we can find fusion technology in the next few years and power becomes like not an issue. Using, I don't know exactly where it is. I think it's in New York, but there is a farm there that's all done indoors with lighting and stuff like that. And in 1 acre of space, they produce 173 acres of um, food, like 173 acres worth of food in that 1 acre of space. So if we converted all of our current farms without expanding into other land into indoor farms like that, right? It would vastly increase our power consumption. We'd be using so much power, but we'd have fusion, so it wouldn't matter. Um, we could have 173 times 8 billion people with no changes, right? We could use all the non-arable land for building giant apartment buildings or whatever we need to accommodate that. And that's just here on this planet without going into outer space. That's an insane amount of people, right? Yeah. Like nearly a trillion or whatever. Yeah.
If there's an afterlife, how would you envision that? Okay, this is like the more practical side of things, like
Yeah.
if transhumanism, like we imagine it, maybe gets delayed or doesn't happen as quickly as we want it to happen. So,
So like I don't think that there's any reason to believe in an afterlife personally. So like in my opinion, like if I die, that's it, I'm gone. Right. Um, maybe an afterlife could be something where one of those AIs in the future brings people back. But yeah, like I don't see anything that would suggest that there is an afterlife or we continue in any way after death.
and more questions about death. Now, if transhumanism gets delayed, these are just hypothetical questions.
Right. Transhumanism is hypothetical, so it's
Yeah.
all good.
How would you how would you want to die? Or like, yeah, if you get that choice, how would you want to pass away?
Um, as old as possible and as healthy as possible. So, yeah, uh, that's pretty much it. I just try and take care of myself and, take whatever supplements or whatever can keep me healthy for longer and keep going until I can't go anymore. Just on the chance that transhumanism might make it, right?
That's right. Like, how do you think how old is like healthy and old? Like,
Um, well, in my family, there's actually a peculiar thing where everybody dies at 83. So the men die at 83. So I would like to extend that if possible, right? Because I don't think that anybody in my family is like actively doing stuff like taking life extension supplements and stuff like that. So yeah, um, yeah, I'd love to crack 100.
have you taken steps on, or back to the transhumanism topic, have you taken steps to like be in touch with the technology and be like,
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I,
yeah.
I regularly donate to the Sens Foundation, and
Mhm.
I follow so many different people about like life extension medicine and technology and stuff like that. And yeah, I take a lot of supplements that are related to that. So yeah, like I'm working on it.
And do you think that do you think that majority of I feel like majority of the people don't think the way you do. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
and so how are you like how are you dealing with that feeling of just being in a minority of wanting things to happen, even if you
It
see progress, of
it
course.
it makes me frustrated a lot of times, like I think about sports and how much money and stuff people spend on sports, and to me how like pointless it is. I think of all those like $1 million player salaries compounding and all the stadiums that are billions of dollars and all the ticket sales and advertising and all of that stuff. And I'm like, if we put that into medical research for like 10 years, there wouldn't be a disease left that would be more than like go to a doctor and take a pill or a quick treatment or something like that, right? It wouldn't take much. But the fact that we're spending it on sports instead, it just like drives me insane. Like, I don't like it. I don't like that. Like, I see so much stuff that we're doing and I just consider it an absolute waste. But yeah, I am the minority and I know that. So unfortunately, nothing I can do. I can't change everyone's mind.
Yeah. So if you like your mind gets uploaded and gets distributed across space, um, are there any specific galaxies or planets or certain kind of like conditions that you wanna witness?
So one thing that like really, really interests me is like terraforming of planets and stuff. Um, like I think it would be really cool to terraform Mars and terraform Venus and stuff like that and have like other livable worlds here in our solar system. I just think it would be cool to like get just like a gigantic spaceship, huge, right? And then take that ship with like its crew or whatever, right? Travel to a star that has detectable planets, right? Even if they're not habitable, just has some. And then go there, people have kids along the way, the population goes up on the ship. And then when you reach there, you know, you take some time, you gather resources from the solar system, and you find a planet, you terraform it, you make it livable. And then, some of the people will stay there on the planet, and then they'll start a new civilization there. Um, Maybe you can fill it with like custom design, genetically engineered creatures and stuff like that, and just see what we can do with genetics and play around, and then yeah, and then take the same ship and go to the next star, and just keep going star to star, bouncing your way through the galaxy. And then, when you hit the edge, maybe you have two options. Maybe you can go back and visit all the places that you populated with life, see how they developed. Or maybe you can keep going beyond the galaxy and go to like the solo stars that are in between galaxies, because they're there, they're just rare, and work your way to a new galaxy and find out what's going on there. Do the same thing there. Um,
Yeah.
or if you can copy your mind, do both.
Yeah, that sounds good. And also that somehow doesn't discount that there might be, people still in human form at that point of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think if, humans have evolved over the years, how do you imagine like the human form would be like 2000 years from now?
Well, 2,000 years, I don't think is enough time to really evolve a lot. Over millions of years,
Right.
definitely we could change into multitudes of different species. Like over 2,000 years, we'd become all kinds of different like cultures, right? They always say that like the best way to find aliens is to become the aliens, right? You go out into the galaxy, and then eventually that civilization diverges so much that they're like nothing like you. And yeah, the same would happen eventually, like with our genetics. Um, I read a book by Stephen Baxter where that exact thing happened. Of course, his timeline was like really compressed. It was only like 10,000 years or something like that. But like there was like sea humans and like short, stout humans that lived on high gravity planets and stuff like that. And um, yeah, like basically humanity evolved into a bunch of different species by just going out and exploring the galaxy. And eventually that will happen. And also, I think we'll be able to do stuff called uplifting as well. Whereas we're like we use our knowledge of like genetic engineering and stuff like that to like, chimpanzees aren't that far off from us. What if we uplifted them into their own intelligent species? Or what if we did the same thing with like dogs or cats, or who knows, right? Like we we learn the technology, and we could you know bring other animals along with us, and maybe octopi might get uplifted, right? Who knows? I think there's going to
So,
be species that we create too.
so what do you imagine is a level of consciousness where we are? If there's levels of consciousness, where do you think we are in it? And what are the levels that you think are still unattainable for most of us? Like we don't see it, of course, because we're
Right.
not at that
um
level yet.
so um Ray Kurzweil, he talks a lot about the singularity. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah. So the singularity, I think, is like, I would say, the next level, right? Like we're getting close, not really, but like within the next few years or something like that, we'll probably have an AI that's, say, as smart as a person, right? And then when we have that, it's only going to be, say, another 10 years or 15 years or something before we have an AI that's like as smart as 1,000 humans, right? And then another 10 or 15 years past that, we'll probably have an AI that's as smart as like 1 billion humans. And that's what the singularity means. It's like, it's when it just in the same way that like the singularity of a black hole, we don't know what's happening there. Like we have no way of predicting. We can't know. The technological singularity is the same. Like how can we comprehend with our brains that we have what a brain would be like that's as smart as 1 billion of us in one? Like that's something that just it cannot be fathomed. And so I think that's like the next level of technology or consciousness or whatever is definitely going to be a hyper intelligent AI, something that like no one on earth will be able to even comprehend.
So just like storms and hurricanes, do you think we'll ever, or humanity will ever get to the point where technology becomes indestructible? Because right now it's like dependent on electricity, on it
Yeah,
not being submerged in the water and stuff like that.
yeah. I think like we're on our way to doing that. Like I think that's something that'll happen when we become like a type 1 civilization. Because right now, I don't know if you know the Kardashev scale. That's what I'm referring to here. It's
I've heard
like
that.
so the Kardashev scale is like a proposed. There's lots of modifications to it, but like the original one is uh, uh, the a type 1 civilization is one that can use all of the energy that comes to its planet and knows everything about its planet and can control its planet entirely. And then a type 2 civilization would be one that can use all of the energy of its star, like the entire energy output of its star. And then a type 3 civilization would be a civilization that can use all of the energy of an entire galaxy. That would be very difficult, by the way. But um, I think when we become a type 1 civilization, which right now, if you go by like energy usage, like if you say the total amount of sunlight that hits the planet from Earth, and then you base that on the total amount of energy that we use as humans, right now we're at like a 0.7. So we're not a type 1 civilization right now. We're still a type 0 civilization, but we're getting there, right? We're at a 0.7. But once you get to type 1, you'll have the ability to like stop a hurricane in its tracks, right? You'll be able to like predict and prevent tornadoes. You'll be able to like have full control really of the weather. There'll be no such thing as droughts, right? You'll just rain when you need it, where you need it, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but yeah, that's a ways off, right? Even like projecting out our current energy usage, that's probably not going to happen until like end of the century. Like we'll have hyper intelligent AI before we get to that point.
So do you think that when AI becomes super efficient, um, do you think that humanity will somehow get lazy and stop thinking?
Um, I don't think so. Like like I think you know AI coming for our jobs or whatever. That's a good thing, right? Like uh, we should be automating stuff. We should be automating as much as possible. If there is a job that can be automated, automate it. why should humans have to work to live, right? When we have the technology to provide for everybody for free, right? We can just automate all the jobs, and then people would be able to focus on bettering themselves, right? You wouldn't have to worry about bills or whatever, right? Like you wouldn't have any obligations other than to yourself and to those that you know. So yeah, I think that it'll actually make us better people when AI becomes hyper advanced, because um, so much of the stuff that drags us down and slows our development and our advancement as humans um, is work, right? Like having to do stuff to live. But given an unlimited free time, we could focus entirely on making our lives better and making everyone's lives better.
If life's better, how do you envision your life would be? Let's say 30 or 40 years from now. That's around the age when our generation, are gonna be considered senior citizens. What would you want to be
Yeah.
doing by then? How would you, in general, how do you envision life at that point of time?
Um, I would love to be actively taking part in like exploring the galaxy and leaving the planet and stuff like that. Yeah. Uh, I would be more than happy to be starting a colony on the moon or starting a colony on Mars and working on, the beginning stages of terraforming or something like that. And um, yeah, that would be amazing.
That sounds really good. Um, are there anything more that you'd want to say? We only have approximately about 5 minutes. Like any message that you want the world to know, or your kids to know, your family to know.
I just want the world to wake up, stop doing stuff that doesn't benefit the human race, and start progressing us to becoming like a galactic species. And let's go out there and get this galaxy.
Beautiful. It was such a pleasure talking to you today.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I would say I really learned a lot. And like I said, your optimism is infectious. And I
Appreciate
feel,
that. Yeah.
yeah, it lifted my spirits. So
Glad to hear. Glad to hear.
yeah. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for
I'll
inviting me.
see you around, of course.
Of course. See you around. Right. You have a good one.
Bye.
Bye bye.